Hey everyone, it's Brenda back again with another episode of Three Uniques. I've got on Kim Kiel today out of Edmonton, Canada. How are you
Mhm.
doing?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you, Brenda?
I'm good. Sorry, that was really fast. How are you doing today, Kim?
I'm doing good. It's actually not too cold here in Edmonton. We're not in like the deep freeze that we normally get at this time of year, so I'm actually pretty grateful for that.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it was a little cold in Vancouver recently, but then we've also had all this rain. Today it's somewhat dry. So, yeah, anyways, enough of the weather report. Everyone, you need to know Kim Kiel. She has an amazing podcast out right now, which is called
Ill communication.
and I need to understand a little bit more about that, but we'll get to that in a second. Kim is a direct response strategist. So when you want to know about copywriting, email campaigns, like she's your gal, like you got to like reach out to her. She's the founder of a boutique copywriting agency called Kim Kiel Copy. And yeah, I've gone to a couple of your free sessions that you've had. I've used your welcome sequence. I'm still using your welcome sequence.
Awesome.
It's like an awesome thing.
Love it.
Um, Kim, like, yeah, tell us a little bit about how you support your clients in the world of copywriting.
Sure. So I have been a copywriter like officially for about 5 years.
Okay.
Prior to that, I was writing copy. I just didn't know that that's what I was doing. I was working
Oh,
primarily in the fundraising sector,
okay.
doing direct response, but for charities. And then about 5 years ago, when I made the switch to become an entrepreneur and I discovered this world of copywriting, I was like, hey, I can do that. And because I'd had this long history in communications
Mhm.
and fundraising, I was able to transfer all of my skills to direct response copywriting or
Right.
sales copywriting, or it's sometimes called conversion copywriting. Basically, it just means I write copy to help you sell your services and your genius to the world. So I help clients with website copy. I help clients with by providing a voice guide so that they understand what their voice and personality and brand is in the
Mhm.
written word, so they can communicate that to their team or their subcontractors. I also write a lot of launch copy, sales copy, emails to sell, Facebook ads. And then the other little side of my business that I really truly love is what's called the Joy of Copy Club, which is a small community where entrepreneurs come in and they receive weekly copy coaching. You can bring any kind of copy you want,
Oh,
and
cool.
we look at it, we review it. They have
Mhm.
access to my templates, and it's just really lovely to see how people increase their confidence with copywriting and start like getting over all the mindset gunk that we have when we're
Yeah,
writing about ourselves, because it's really hard to write about yourself. So that's in a nutshell what I do.
love it. And you've got your podcast.
And I have my podcast. It's called the Ill Communication Podcast. It
Okay.
is copywriting tips and sales strategies for small business.
And it's so funny because I remember when you launched it, it came out end of last year, like
Yeah,
fall-ish,
about August, end of
August.
August.
Okay. Yeah. And I was like, oh, copywriting podcast. Interesting.
Mhm.
I never thought that, like, as a copywriter, because I always think about, well, I need to see your stuff. I need to see it. But like, I've listened to a couple of your episodes and I want to get into like one of them, which I was telling to you earlier, the one that you talked about as far as like midlife
Mhm.
or Gen X women and how we should be marketing more towards those. And obviously, service providers out there should really be paying attention to that group. But I've also listened to some of your other tips around copywriting, getting your voice out there. And it's like, yeah, well, first of all, any topic can be on a podcast, but you also make it really interesting. And
Uh,
you can actually learn. I'm like, I've looked at some of my copy as a result of listening to your sessions.
Thank you, Brenda. Like I had this little, like a little niggle in my brain to start this podcast, and I always just wanted it to be one tip,
Yeah.
one strategy, because you don't need to like have a whole copywriting course to become a better copywriter. It doesn't have to be hard, but I think all of the copywriting courses are these like big,
Mhm.
voluminous, important things. And it's good. Like if as a professional copywriter, that's what I want to take. But for
Right.
the average business owner, like just give me one tip that I can implement today. And I chose to do it audio because I write all day long and I didn't want
Yeah.
my message to be in the medium that I'm working all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shift it up a little bit. Give
Yeah.
yourself a little bit of spice in your business, which is amazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the Gen X women. and how we are skipping this group. It's like we've been called the sandwich, like the Generation X group has been called the sandwich generation between the millennials and the boomers, the forgotten ones. And even in the workplace, it's like millennials got into the whole employee engagement experience. Like, what about me? And it's just like, well, yeah, what about us, the Gen Xers that are still in that area? But specifically Gen X women, like I loved, it was a podcast from a few weeks ago. This will probably come out in March. So way back, I guess in January, it would have
Yep.
come out. And yeah, I'd love for you to just share some of your thoughts around that. And why did you create that podcast episode?
I mean, I can't say that I invented this, obviously. I think I heard somebody else talking about the potential for Gen Xers and why isn't anyone talking to us? And as I started to think about it and started to research it, I realized how true it is. If you think of all of the media and marketing and advertising that we're hit with, a lot of it is aimed at millennials or even Gen Z,
Right.
or it's the boomers. There is really nothing aimed at Gen Xers and specifically Gen X women. It's either like adult diapers or it's, Gap clothes,
Yeah, I'm
right?
not ready
Like
for that yet.
there's nothing that is intentionally aimed for us.
Right.
However, I have seen a few examples of the entertainment industry figuring out that Gen Xers are actually a good market. And you found this in Top Gun Maverick. They
Right.
really
Bring Gen
tapped into our
Yes.
nostalgia, our
Right.
love, the music. Like they really
Sure.
preserved a lot of those things that made it lovely for us, which is why it became such a big hit. And also Stranger Things. Stranger Things
Yeah.
has the
Big
soundtrack
push.
of the 80s.
Yeah.
So I think that they very, very intelligently chose to set it in the 80s because they would know we would be watching it with our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah,
reminiscing about Breakfast Club and 16 Candles and
exactly.
yeah, all those
Exactly.
songs. Yeah.
And so there's proof that that kind of marketing and hook really captures us and brings us in, but
Mhm.
there's just not enough of it. And when you really think about it, Gen X women hold the purse strings for three different generations.
Yes.
We're making decisions for ourselves, we're
Mhm.
making decisions for our kids, and we're helping our parents make decisions. So, why isn't there more talking to me? And why don't I see more people in advertising and marketing speaking directly to me?
Right.
And as I sort of came to this epiphany, I have started to completely shift all of my marketing as well, because I want to serve Gen X women. I want to help amplify these smart, resilient, tenacious
Mhm.
women in business. I want to help amplify their voices. So I'm kind of on a soapbox about it.
I love it. And like what you mentioned, like we have a large buying power, right? From that standpoint. And there's a lot of women coming into this. Like I think there's like estimates as far as like Gen X women, obviously midlife, going through physiological thing changes, going through menopause, perimenopause. There's a huge group of that are going to be going through that. Something like in the like 20 millions or something like that in the United States alone. So it's like it's a big group of people that are going to be going through this in a very short period of time. And you're seeing people like Naomi Watts, Stacey London starting to talk about this more,
Yes.
right? And it's calling out situations like we had the newscaster in Canada. La Flamme.
Oh,
Uh,
yes. Yeah. When she
Getting
was
terminated.
turfed. Yeah.
Yeah, getting terminated last year, just all of a sudden and like out of the blue, and she didn't realize that. And and hearing more and more that women in media or women in entertainment are like losing their jobs, right?
Mhm.
But then you're also seeing some great wins out there, like the Viola Davis, who's like midlife, but stacking up all the awards and
Just
stuff.
got her EGOT. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like there's shifts that are absolutely happening, but I think it's really cool that you want to go into this space for business, but also to help businesses attract this type of clientele because it's going to be beneficial overall for everyone.
And if you think of all the things that we have on our plate,
Mhm.
As Gen X women at this stage of our life, like we are managing our kids' schedule, we're managing our schedule, we're working, we're planning for our future, we're
Right.
trying to help our parents get to their medical appointments, we're dealing with our own health issues.
Yeah.
And like, if you have a solution that can help me with one of those areas, either planning my financial future or
Mhm.
helping me reduce stress, like you need to be talking to me because I am looking for a solution.
Love it. So I want to shift gears a little bit because
Yeah.
you also, I mean, you're working with business leaders, entrepreneurs, and in your, in your area too, like you mentioned, like you just started your business 5 years ago. So I'm just kind of curious, like what has been like, the best advice or the biggest, monumental piece of advice that you've used and it actually worked. It's like it's stuck with you, and that you would share with other entrepreneurs and business owners.
I think it's been a gradual learning for me, but to learn that I have the wisdom inside of myself.
Mhm.
And that because I have a 20-year career before starting my business,
Right.
I actually came to the table with a lot of skills and abilities. I came with a network. And when I started out, I kind of forgot about all of that. I forgot that I actually know a few things.
Mhm.
And it's been a bit of a journey for me to appreciate that I have some pretty good ideas and all I got to do is just take action on them. And it's okay if it doesn't, like, it's not a 10 out of 10. 8 out of 10 is really good. And so
Yeah.
just to be like really a lot more easy on myself and not to have such perfectionist tendencies, and just to look at everything as an experiment. Like, putting my podcast out, that was an experiment. I'm working on this little launch right now. It's an experiment. And when I look at it through that lens, the pressure kind of comes off and I can kind of just do it as like a low hanging fruit as much as possible. And
Right.
that has really served my business well, just to kind of like, I don't want to say I like did the bare minimum, but I kind of have like just done a little bit and it's gotten me pretty far.
Yeah, well, a couple things I would pull from that is know what your strengths are.
Mm.
And your strengths serve you really well. And if you can go back even to say like the past like 5 years or the past 10 years and see where those strengths have shown up on that sort of leadership or business journey line for yourself, it's like chances are they're going to be that with you the next like 5, 10 years. So just how do you continue to like heighten those and then acquire things as you need, right? I always look at it too, like you can acquire partners or experts or, people that can support you in the stages of your business that you don't know, but like just really understanding like what drives you and what's important to you.
Yeah.
I love that. And then I guess ties into your three uniques.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a perfect little segue. I didn't really plan for that, but you just like scooped it up. So yeah, I'd love to hear what makes you unique.
Okay. So you just want me to list the three
Yeah,
ones
so
that I
you
came
can,
up
yeah,
with?
you can
Yeah.
list them off and I'll definitely have questions
Yeah.
probably.
So of course, as a copywriter, I couldn't just pick one word. So there's a few of them that there's kind of like a couple of words there. So my first one is communication
Mhm.
and interpretation.
Okay.
The second one is connection and community. I think they're kind of the same. And then the third one is trailblazer.
Nice. Okay. So yeah, interpretation with communication.
Yeah. So I was a park interpreter for years where I would like lead people and interpret this is the nature, this is what you're looking at.
Oh.
And I find that in my work as a copywriter, I have to do a lot of interpretation. Like coaches or experts or consultants will spit a lot of information at me and I have to be able to distill that down into something that's digestible. And so
Mhm.
to me it was like a little bit of it's an act of interpretation and then sharing that out with the world.
Right. And
Yeah.
then community and connection. How is that important to you?
I mean, my biggest value is family,
Okay.
and but it's also that like connection. And I think through copywriting, through the work that I do, through the communities that I'm trying to create, it's all about building that connection, whether it's a connection from a client to their or from a business owner to their client, or a connection among women, or connection with my friends, like that to me, or the connection you have in your family. That's where that connection came from.
Okay, beautiful. And then
Mhm.
sorry, your last one.
Trailblazer.
Trailblazer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that something that shows up for you a lot? Like obviously in the business side, but are there examples of it showing up for you in other areas of your life?
Yeah, so when I was first doing the exercise and it was talking about like what are the experiences of your past, and I kept coming up with like, well, I used to travel a lot. I used to like really love adventure.
Mhm.
I took a university degree that they didn't even offer. I had to create my own university degree to get what I wanted to be able to study what I wanted to study.
Right.
I proposed to my husband. Like there's a lot of things that I did that was a little out of the ordinary, and
Right.
I mean, I think starting a business in your 40s is kind of like blazing a bit of a different trail. So, yeah, that's why I chose that.
Awesome. And is that something like when you think about like your upbringing, your family, like origin, are there trailblazers or are you like a trailblazer within a group of non-trailblazers?
I mean, I think everyone in my immediate family is very individual in their own way. My
Mhm.
dad was an entrepreneur. He
Okay.
did run his own surveying business, but it was never like celebrated that he had his own company. It was like when he sold his company and joined like a bigger conglomeration that
Right.
was then he'd made it. So it wasn't until just a couple of years ago that I actually was like, oh wait, my dad was an entrepreneur too. So it wasn't really a big thing. Um, yeah, I would say that my sister and I were both a little bit individual in that,
Mhm.
but I heard I growing up routinely, my mom would say things like, "Oh, well, that's different." Like anytime I'd say, "Oh, I'm going to do this." "Oh, that's different." "Oh, I proposed to my husband." "Oh, that's different." So,
Okay, so it definitely stuck there. That's
yeah.
awesome. Um, and then, well, you kind of answered this question a little bit, but let's take a different spin on it. Because I was going to ask you the question about like, should every entrepreneur need copywriting skills? Is that like
Mm.
make or break it? Because so much, I think right now, like when you think about social media and these like websites and it's like email marketing, it's like a lot of it is written. And I hear from my clients that are starting up businesses like, I've never had to do this before. And so is it important that they get some type of skill training in this area? Or is it like, no, I just have to figure out a way to outsource this all?
Oh, I don't think you can outsource it all in the beginning. I think it is a kind of like you do kind of need to walk the path a little bit because
Right.
it's through your communication that you figure out who you are and what you do and who you serve. So there's a bit of trial and error. I do think, I mean, copywriting is essential for business. I had no idea, even though I was going into business as a copywriter, I had no idea how much copy even I would need to write for myself.
Right.
And it is hard. But what I have come to learn is there are ways to make it simpler.
Hmm.
And people aren't talking about that enough, which is kind of what I hope to share in the podcast is like just keep things simple. Like the rule of one forces you to think of like when I'm sitting down to write an email, what is the one purpose I want this email to accomplish? I
Right.
don't need it. I don't need to tell all of my stories in here. I don't need to link to all of my resources. I don't, just like focusing on the one goal of that email just instantly like shrinks down the amount of overwhelm and allows you to, okay, I'm just going to write this one simple email to one person about one thing. And then boom, you send it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. Well, yeah, the rule of one as far as like one piece of like gem content, but then also write it to like one person. Who is
Yes.
that one person? If you were like you and I now having a conversation, what's the one thing that we want to make sure that we walk away with from that talk? And put that into the email versus thinking, oh, this is going out to however many people are on your list, 200 people, 1,500 people, whatever that looks like. And you've got to like try and understand the minds and thoughts of everybody. It's like,
Yeah, even though you are writing to an email list,
mhm,
you're writing one email to a friend because when I get that email, it's coming from you to me in my inbox. So you want to write it with that sort of friendly feeling in mind. And I used to do that when I worked in nonprofits, and I still do that today for my clients. I think that's one of the biggest like bad habits that is hardest for people who move from like the corporate world into consulting or into business ownership is that there's this sort of like belief that we need to be very stiff and very corporate and we have this corporate speak and this third person kind of cold distance, but when you are your own brand, your own business, like being personable with someone is actually what draws us closer to you. And a human being is reading what you've written, and a human being is going to make that decision. So write like a human to a
Yeah.
human. Yeah.
Okay, so with that, general rules, swearing, no swearing.
If you swear in your average day life, and
Right.
if you would get on a Zoom call with someone and be like, bleep that, yes, swear.
Okay.
Um, I probably, if you're like a real, you know what? No, I even have a client who swears like a trucker when she's on her lives.
Awesome.
She swears all the time,
Right.
and I wrote a voice guide for her so she could get her team to write more in her voice without having to do so much editing. I actually, for the first time, had to write like a how to swear in this person's voice, like if you're dropping the F bomb, do it this way, not that way. Like there were some very subtle nuances. So, yes,
I
you
love that.
have permission to swear.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that like if you're gonna like work with this person and they're like coming off as this like polite, demure, and nothing wrong with that image, and then you're actually something else completely different when that person starts working with you, they might actually feel like from a service standpoint that, you know, that's not what they signed up for. So
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
should be in all sort of touch points, but yeah, I love that.
Mhm.
Okay. And then email or social media? Like if you had a choice between like what you're going to build or like how much time you're going to spend on either or, you're starting up, it's your first year of business. What would you suggest to people?
I wish, like, even though I'm a copywriter, I didn't really work on growing my email list from the very beginning. I also didn't really work out or do too much on social media, but I regret that I didn't put more effort into growing my email list. So I will always say email list is so important because that's where you have a much better chance to hold their attention. You have a better
Right.
chance to build that connection and to make that sale. The number of people who I'm seeing post that they got locked out of LinkedIn, they got locked out of Facebook,
Or
they can't
Instagram
access
shutting
their
down.
Instagram.
Yeah.
The Instagram rules are changing, the algorithms changing, TikTok, like definitely have those social channels. I think they are absolutely important, and find the one that works for you and do it your way. But then make sure you have a call to action on there that brings people onto your email list by offering a free resource or some activity, a workshop, or a webinar that you can
Right.
then bring them onto your email list.
Okay. Awesome. And then like with email, I don't know if you have a feeling on these two other platforms, ConvertKit or ActiveCampaign.
The one that you're going to use.
Yeah.
So if like confession, I'm using MailChimp.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
was on MailChimp and then I moved over to ConvertKit, but yeah,
Yeah. So like I chose
good for
MailChimp
you.
because it seemed like it was like the lowest hanging fruit. I could
Yeah.
get my head around it, and I've used it for the last 5 years. I
Awesome.
am actually in the process of moving over to ConvertKit as we speak.
Okay.
But I also know, like that same client who I was talking about who swears, has the potty mouth,
Yeah.
she grew a multi-million dollar business using MailChimp. So I
Yeah.
say use the
Lots of people do.
platform and the service that you're going to use. It doesn't matter what it is, just use it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I love that. Welcome sequence or landing page?
Well, if you have a welcome sequence, you need a landing
I
page.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think you need a landing page to like sell people into getting your free offer, and then you can serve up the welcome sequence after that.
Okay. Funnels versus paid ads.
Uh, well, you sometimes need paid ads to run to the funnel.
Funnel. Yeah.
Uh, and uh, I think people invest in ads too soon.
Hmm.
I think you need to have an offer that converts
Right.
before you start putting ad power behind it.
Hmm.
So I guess I would say funnel first,
Right.
test it first, make sure, or like your freebie, does somebody actually want your freebie, and then run ads to it. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Last question for you, Kim. If we were to give you a billboard and you could put anything on it and it could be anywhere in the world,
Oh.
what would it say and where would you put it?
Oh, a billboard anywhere in the world.
Anywhere. Yeah.
Oh man. And what would it say? I think I don't know where in the world I would put it. I think I'd just keep it here in Alberta.
Okay.
And I would just say something like, it's going to sound so cliche, but like, reach out and connect with each other. Like, there is so much extremism and picking sides.
Mhm.
And I think we're forgetting who our neighbors are.
Right.
And like, even though we may have a very politically different religious backgrounds,
Mhm.
like, humans are meant to connect and
Yeah.
to like relate to each other, even if we don't agree on everything. And I guess that would be sort of the tone of that. And I mean, certainly in Alberta, and I know in other places in the world, there's a lot of, well, I want to separate from Canada, and it's like, no, we don't want that. You know,
Right. Yeah.
let's just connect, let's hang out, let's get to know each other, and I would love for more of that to happen in the world.
I love it. So more of the human spirit on a big
Yeah.
billboard.
Hmm.
Okay. Very cool. Kim, thanks for being on today and sharing your three uniques with us and telling us a little bit more of the inside scoop of copywriting and connecting with customers and just knowing that, there's the option of also working with you. So where can people find you?
I think first I'd invite people to check out the podcast.
Okay.
You can get to it on any of the podcast players. You can search Ill Communication. Side note, it is a reference to a Beastie Boys album, and
Oh,
that is why it's named that. And but it helps you become an ill communicator. So check out the podcast. You can also get to it on my website. And also on my website, I have a magnetic copy checklist. So if you're looking just for a few quick tips, you can access that at kimkiel.com/magnetic. And that's sort of like the foundation for everywhere else that I hang out. I'm on Instagram. I'm a little bit on LinkedIn. I'm a little bit on Facebook, but the website is sort of where you can find me.
excellent. Great. Thanks a lot for being on today.
This is a great conversation. Thanks, Brenda.
And thanks everyone for tuning in to the Three Uniques podcast. I always like to say at the end, there's 8 billion people on this planet. Get out there and share your three uniques. Somebody needs what you've got. Take care.